Hello and welcome into another episode of the Dig in Denver podcast, a podcast for the people, by the people. I, of course, Derek Bettis, will be your master of ceremonies for this episode. You can always find me on Twitter at DigInDerek. Make sure to go follow the team Twitter at DigInDenver. If you're not following us on Instagram, we do have a great Instagram account on over there. And of course, make sure to always find your way on over to the website, www.digindenver.com, where we have all of our articles that we post on there. Make sure to check us out. Of course, if you are listening to this podcast and you do enjoy what you're hearing, we always do appreciate a rating and review on iTunes. That does play a big part and a role in how we pop up in searches. So very beneficial for us, and I really do appreciate it. So plus it helps me tailor what you guys want to listen to, what you guys want to hear, and how I can make the show even better. So let me know. We do appreciate it. Tonight's pod is going to be about the Nuggets win over the New York Knicks. We've got a lot to talk about, some really good things, some kind of rough things. So we'll dive a little bit more into that. Without further ado, let's dig in. All right. The Denver Nuggets beat the New York Knicks 130-118 tonight at the Pepsi Center on the second straight win in a row at home. To what's been a up and down January month so far. We've had some drops that definitely have hurt and some growing lessons in there, some growing pains, I should say. And there's also been a couple good wins so far in tonight, as well as against the Portland Trail Blazers, which has been well documented as a really solid win. At the Pepsi Center tonight was Pride Night, which I just want to say I thought was really cool. I thought it was awesome to integrate members of this community, the Mile High Nuggets basketball community. Make sure to show them some appreciation, regardless of your personal views and opinions on the subject and the matter. It's 2018, and to exclude anybody from our community due to just your personal beliefs and the way you may feel on a situation is a little ludicrous. So big shout out to the Nuggets organization for putting on a night like tonight, welcoming in the LGBT community. Harrison Wynn on Twitter went ahead and said that they're actually showcasing, and they invited members, leaders of the LGBT community, and we're showcasing them, and we're really playing into it. It wasn't something that was just non-existent. So like I said, big shout out to the Kroenke family, the whole organization for putting this on. Thought it was really cool, and it makes me proud to make sure to know that this organization, an organization that we follow here at Dig in Denver, obviously closely, that they're doing some great things over there too, as far as progressing the community and society as well in general. So big shout out, Nuggets. Way to go, guys. How cool would it have been? Actually, I believe Morton, Jeff Morton of Rocky Mountain Sports, he actually said about how cool would it be to actually see them wear the old school rainbow uniform on Pride Night. That uniform is just sick in general, but I mean, it would just been so fitting, right? But I doubt we ever get to see those uniforms in action again, at least for the foreseeable future. It's been brought up multiple times about the old Skyline jersey and layout, and Nike said how they're really just focusing on the future and moving forward. So unfortunately, Nuggets fans, we won't get to see that, but would have been kind of cool to bust out tonight. So either way, let's go ahead and get on to the notes of tonight's game. So there's a lot of things to talk about, actually, and I think one of the big ones, obviously one of the first things that pops out to you is tonight's starting unit. Tonight's starters were the same starters against the Portland game: Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Will Barton, Nikola Jokic, and Mason Plumlee. A lineup that did pretty good in last game. In 17 minutes that crew played together, they had 46 points. They shot 48 from the field on 35 attempts. 36% from the three-point line on 11 attempts there, 20 rebounds, 12 assists. They were plus negative of positive 13. So I really enjoy seeing Wilson Chandler come off the bench. If you listen to the last podcast, we mentioned it, how Logan had came up with such an idea about this happening and what it could do for the Nuggets and the stalled offense, especially in the second unit. Last year, if you remember, our first unit was always kind of rough, and what's been kind of the Nuggets' build and makeup is the depth. So the second unit would come in, play really well, and we were just trying to get the starters to really get going. This year's been the exact opposite, pretty much the entire year. First unit has been fire. Second unit comes in, lulls out a little bit, having a hard time finding a scorer or a dominant player on the second unit tonight. Wilson Chandler did chip in with 16 points. He was pretty hot from the three-point line, got a little cold there in 29 minutes, though. He was able to put up those 16 points, put up grab a rebound, and ended with a positive 10. So he had a nice chip in. However, the shining star of the second unit tonight was none other than Trey Lyles, a young man who's been having a heck of a season, who's been a wonderful surprise to many Nuggets fans. And he had it working tonight. He was hitting the threes, pick and pop. He was doing his drives, finishing strong, definitely doing some nice cuts to the basket, being very aggressive, looking for his and knocking down buckets. He came in clutch in a time when we needed him to. Again, multiple times during this game where the second unit seemed to lull. They had a lot of one-on-one moments where what was working in the first half wasn't necessarily being carried over into the time when the second unit would come in, and that's what the game really was about tonight. The game was a tale of two halves. The first half was really great, had some awesome free-flowing motion, something that Malone's been talking about. They were pressing the pace. Jamal Murray came out with a ton of energy. He wasn't on fire, but he still contributed to his team, and I thought he led the team nicely. And so the Denver Nuggets actually had 7 Nuggets in double figures. Will Barton with 10, Gary Harris with 23. 18 of those came in the first half, so he was absolutely electric in the first half, hitting threes all over the place. That foot may be hurt, but that stroke was not. It was on point tonight, so that was great to see. Nikola Jokic ended with 18 and 10 assists. Almost had himself a triple-double, but definitely had the night with a double-double, I believe, 18th or 19th on the season. Jamal Murray with 18 points. Plumlee with 14, who had a great game, a very quietly impactful 14 points. 6 for 6 from the field because, I believe 90% of them were dunks. He played the short corner role extremely well. If he could learn to continue to play with the spacing that him and Nikola played with tonight, the ability for both those two bigs to pass like they were passing tonight is it's going to be hard to keep up with. And it really gets the offense flowing, but more times than not, you'll see Plumlee go into the post and try to post up, clog the things up. Nikola Jokic is camping way too much outside. Something that's been that he's received a lot of criticism on the year so far is being a little too passive in not scoring down low and wanting to stand around the three-point line that's been declining. So, it's not always a matchup that works. It's not a lineup that I necessarily love, the Nikola Jokic and Mason Plumlee lineup. However, it was working extremely well tonight. And if Mason Plumlee can make sure to be cognizant of his spacing on the floor with Nikola Jokic, and as well as play that short corner that he was playing tonight, I think he had at least 3 or 4 oops from that short corner. He is a bigger, stronger, I wouldn't necessarily say more athletic, but definitely vertically just as athletic as Kenneth Faried. And Kenneth Faried and Nikola Jokic play extremely well because of that factor. Kenneth Faried isn't somebody who's going to go jack up shots. He definitely doesn't have the passing ability that Mason Plumlee has. And so if Mason Plumlee can play with that gravity from the short corner, phrase kind of coined from Mares of the Locked On Network and Denver Stiffs. But it's true, if he can play with that vertical threat, it really, really worked well tonight. And Mason had some beautiful absolute dimes. Wilson Chandler ended with 16 points. Trey Lyles had 21, put up some big numbers. Like I said, he was really a shining star from that second unit tonight. First half, really good offense, motion. Defense struggled pretty much all night, but there's some good energy in that first unit, I thought. Lots of motion, movement, getting out, recovering on their man. And the bodies were flying. At least the energy and effort was there with the first unit. Still got diced up. Trey Burke from Michigan, somebody who I actually thought was going to be a lot better than he turned out to be, was playing tonight like I thought he would play in this league. He looked like an NBA point guard starter. He was pretty darn good tonight. And ended the night with 18 points, 11 assists, and 2 rebounds. He was slicing and dicing up the Nuggets tonight, especially that backcourt. So Nuggets also had a season high for points scored in the half at 73. Like I said, the first half was just absolute fire. I really thought that in the beginning as well, it was well documented, and something that a lot of the Nuggets fans, a lot of people around the league really had their eye on at was after Jamal Murray's career night, 38 points, was going to be how he's going to play tonight. And The media did an excellent job at covering it, asking Malone and Jamal Murray questions, in which they responded holding each other in an extremely high light. Jamal Murray expressed his gratitude and his love for playing for the coach, as well as Malone almost took a young son, if you will, type of approach with him, saying he's an extension of himself. That stuff has all been covered, but it carried on tonight. You saw the interaction between Murray and Malone at the beginning of the game, something that often does happen. They definitely just made sure to focus a little more on that. That was neat, and that's cool that hopefully going forward and continuing that they can continue to, mold that relationship. I think it's very important as a possible big three member of this team that Jamal Murray is really bought into Coach Malone's his whole vision, and so far, there's been a couple differences or disagreements with some of the players, but for the majority, as far as the young players coming in, seem to really like and dig what Mike Malone's doing. So he has his things that he needs to get better on. Mike Malone is decent coach. Definitely don't agree with a lot of the people who are out there saying fire Malone. I think it's absurd. He has not done nearly as bad as he could have been doing, and the Nuggets, with all the circumstances considered, have actually had an okay year. Ups and downs for sure. The downs have been really down and the highs have been really high, but all in all, the team's doing decent. Don't have who would be considered at this time our second best player in Paul Millsap, and we're still finding ways to string together wins against important teams. Like I said, losing some to some silly games, but it's going to happen in this league. These are top 1% athletes of the world, so it's going to happen every once in a while when you drop your guard. Michael Malone was actually talking about how he really wanted to get back to the offense of last year. A free-flowing, high-motion offense, lots of passing, predominantly ran out of the star center, Nikola Jokic. Tonight, it was interesting that the first run of the game was actually a play, had a kind of double pick down in the paint, and then roll around for Murray up top, who actually had a really nice dish. It was just a really nice play that ended up working out, but I just thought it was funny how they ran a set in that first little go there. But the story of the first half definitely was the bigs and their passing ability, especially led by Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic, all the starters at one point had points on the board. Nikola was still scoreless, but had about 3 assists. That really, I think, set the tone for the whole team, especially with Mason Plumlee. They both had some incredible no-look, look-off pass dimes to multiple different players throughout the entire game. If you actually follow yourself over to the Nuggets Twitter page, they actually reposted a few of those gorgeous dimes, definitely worth a view once or twice. And so that was really the start of it. And the motion in the offense in the beginning really was the best that we've seen in quite a while, at least for the last month, I'd say. What happened tonight in the offense was the closest resemblance of last year's Nuggets team that we've had so far this season, in my opinion. Just a really, really good free-flowing offense, taking excellent shots. Shot selection was there. Jamal Murray, as I said earlier, was being aggressive, still looking for his and pushing the issue. It was just a nice combination of all things happening at once for this offense. So it was really good to see and very encouraging after a good win against the Portland Trailblazers. Instead of the guys come out cold or soft or a little clunky, that rhythm and motion was found immediately right away. I feel like with 2 games under the belt that have worked out pretty well, this is a lineup we're going to continue to see probably extended for quite a while until proven otherwise. Malone, like I said, Malone sticking to the Mason Plumlee, Nikola Jokic, and on nights like tonight, it's going to work out. So early in that first half, the Nuggets went on an 11-2 run around the 7-minute mark. That really spaced them out. Started off, jumped on the Knicks, and really let it up, and really never let up from there. They had the lead pretty strong for a little while. I thought, like I said, the defense just had some good. And I said it last pod as well. The aggressiveness on hedges is important to me. If you're going to dedicate and make sure to trap the guard up high, make sure you do it aggressive enough to where it's hard for him to pass over your big. If you half-heartedly show on those hedges, that gives them the slightest opportunity to see over you and make the pass or the read that they need to do. If you're going to go help on the hedge, or you're on there on the pick and roll for the defensive side, just show aggressively and then recover fast. And the recover has to be there. One thing that frustrates me with a lot of NBA players, but especially this team, is the delayed reaction to get out on a 3-point shooter. you sit there with your hands down, Mark Jackson's hand down, man down, right? Hand down, man down. But a lot of these guys sit there with their hands down at the 3-point line, giving these players, 3 feet of separation, 2 feet of separation, which is way too much. These guys pull up and then they put their hand out and then they jump forward and it's already too late. So I thought the recovery was nice. The aggressiveness on the hedges as well made a big difference. Although the defense wasn't beautiful in the first, but I just like the energy and some of the effort that I saw from especially the first team more than anything. There was lots of chatter as well. Guys were communicating with each other, and I think a lot of that has to do with energy from the court. The offense was flowing. That's always funner. Even Hastings at one point mentioned, he's like, when that starts happening, because they had lulled a couple times in the second half, when that starts happening, the energy around the crowd, around the arena gets better. The excitement, it's funner for the guys. You can see it in their body language and how they're playing and how hard they're playing, the effort that they're showing on the court. And so it was just really good to see. And I think, like I said, a lot of that comes just from the fun that they're having out there when everything's working. I thought that they also did a really good job, Coach. And regardless if it was a design play or not, or if it's just Murray and the team kind of figuring this out, which I have a suspicion that it's something that they're kind of focusing on. It's been happening the last few games where they've really been trying to get Nikola down there in the post and feeding the monster. And they need to, with the good spacing that Plumlee and Nikola were able to find with each other, they just kept leaving it open for him to do his thing, attack Kristaps Porzingis. Hastings had actually referenced an article that was written about Nikola Jokic and his ability to get teams in foul trouble, which actually worked tonight as well. Got Kristaps Porzingis in early foul trouble, and that ended up resulting in him fouling out tonight. And that's what's going to happen when you get Nikola Jokic down the paint. There's not a lot of guys that can hang with him in this league. His footwork's too good for bruisers, and he's too big for anybody who's fast enough to hang with his footwork. He's too smart. He has too good a vision. He's going to pass out of anything. He's going to make you suffer when you're down low. Hit up top on the high post in dribble handoff situations or down in the paint is where Nikola Jokic is his absolute best. And that's what needs to be the focal point. Let him control the offense from the top, or else go down low and make the defense pay on either end. His ability to have multiple touches throughout an offensive set is just going to increase your odds because of his high IQ and his ability and feel for the game. The Nuggets were also just lights out from the first. Everybody was on fire. They shot 66% from the field. Jamal Murray had 8 points, 2 assists, 2 rebounds. Mason Plumlee was 4 for 4 at this time with 8 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds. Nikola Jokic with 4 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. Everyone was chipping in. They were 75% from the 3-point line, shooting 6 for 8. They had 14 assists, which was a big number that stuck off. And if you listen to the last podcast, I also referenced how one of my biggest beliefs is the points in paint with this team. Anytime this team is dominating points in paint, I believe directly correlates, and it's not rocket science, correlates to the high motion offense because people are cutting and passing. There's people going around the rim. Hastings actually made a point about how they were playing below the 3-point line, the free throw line extended. They're playing below that, and anytime that this team can do just that, the points in the paint is going to be high, resulting in the fact that their high motion, good shot selection offense is actually working. I believe that's one of the biggest indicators there. So 20 points in the paint to New York's 12. Definitely had that working in the first half tonight. And the Nuggets ended that quarter with a 11-point lead, 39 points scored by the Denver Nuggets. So great free-flowing offense, a lot of awesome things shown in that first unit. Second unit didn't look too bad, but it was definitely a very good showing for the starters tonight. In the second quarter, Nuggets elected to go with a small ball lineup of Emmanuel Mudiay, who actually had seen some minutes with maybe a couple minutes or a minute and a half in the first. Torrey Craig, Trey Lyles, Wilson Chandler, and Will Barton. Trey Lyles and Wilson being the two bigs of that lineup there. This unit definitely had some concerns for me. Malone was definitely, they're trying to keep the spacing. There's a couple times where, even in the third, I believe, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but in the third, there's a couple times where the offense was lulled, and Malone was telling everybody, space, keep your spacing. And I didn't agree with it. There was something working on the first unit, and that was a lot of secondary options. a lot of off-screen or off-ball movement as well. Screens being set away from the ball, motion being set, taking advantage of lanes that were open before people were passing and before they were driving. That got a lot of the open points in the paint in that first half with that first unit. This second unit really lulled out. And you could see it. I mean, just from a broad, if you pull your eye back from the ball and just look at the entire court with this unit in there, it was a lot of pass the ball, one-on-one offense, and a lot of watching the ball. So there would be lanes, there'd be cutting lanes open, passing lanes open, but nobody was moving. It was so much one-on-one, so much perimeter back and forth, a lot of east and west and not north and south. So they weren't attacking, they weren't getting inside for the kickouts, and it was a lot easier for the Knicks to defend them in that way. Wilson came out early, however, hit some really big threes in this one. Had 10 points. He was shooting 4 for 6 from the field, 2 for 3 from the three-point line, had some really big three-pointers. And that was really nice to see. Only getting 6 more points for the rest of the game, but to see this early ignition was really nice to see from him. And actually a little tidbit thrown out from Harrison Wynn of BSN Denver, that this was actually Wilson's first double-figure game in the past 10 games, and he was able to do it pretty quick on some really nice scoring. The offense, like I said, stalled a lot more of the one-on-one, a lot of standing around, perimeter, just watching the ball. And so that's just changing that. And even though it's a small ball lineup and you want to hit your threes, you still got to take advantage of that passing lane in and out, making the defense work. Anytime you can make the defense make it a mistake after, a few rounds, couple of your options, that's when you start to catch them slipping and you can take advantage of your kick out threes, which is, what you want to do with this small ball lineup. And this was really the emergence of Trey Lyles for tonight. This is when he really started putting in work. He played extremely well. He took on the role of the scorer in this second unit. He took leadership in the fact of, just like Jamal did in the last game, not necessarily verbal, where he's conducting an offense and telling guys where to go and really moving around a field commander, but really just in his play. He was looking for his, and he was letting the game come to him, and that's when he's the most efficient as well. He knows when to be aggressive and take the lane when he can get a guy on his hip, which he's really good at actually. For being so tall, he has extremely good, and he plays low on that first drive, able to get the guy a half step behind him and then makes him pay with his height. So by the time they actually do recover, he's already at the rim dunking on them or scoring and ones or just, getting a nice clean open layup. But really enjoyed his leadership role as far as taking responsibility for the score on this unit. Thought it was really great to see that. And his size, Michael Beasley, who's been having a really good year so far this year and really helped out this team, and to see his resurgence is really nice. But standing next to Trey, I think it's underrated or understated of Trey's size and how big he actually is. He has a good frame. He has a quick first step, like I mentioned, as well as a pretty good vert. He has some nice little bunnies on him, has a nice little spring. So Trey's skill set as well as his physical attributes just make him a tough guard. And then especially you factor in the point that the boy is just lights out from the three, shooting 42% from the three on the year. One of the higher percentages for the Nuggets on the three-point line. So you pair that all together, and that's a tough guard. Definitely a opinion that I will gladly eat. I was not excited about the Trey Lyles trade at first. However, seeing this young man play and seeing him get minutes, I truly believe he needs more minutes. His effectiveness on the court is a great thing to have. Sparty, Gary Harris actually got super hot here as well. Went on a little 9 straight point little spree there. In 15 minutes, he had 18 points, 1 assist, 1 rebound, 6 or 7 shooting from the field, 1 steal, and he was a perfect 4 for 4 from the three-point line. He really had it clicking tonight for a little while. His foot may have been hurt, and you could see it. He may not have been cutting or planting as hard as he normally would have. Definitely stuck a lot to his outside shots, but he had it working, and that's totally fine on a night like tonight. You can chip in like that, and you're hurt. I'm all good with that. You'll get no complaints from me. Once the starters in this one check back in, sub Wilson Chandler as opposed to Will Barton. There is so much movement. Rolls to the basket once again, just like in the first. Rolls to the basket, picks away. You could just see when the ball was moving on the opposite end, there was guys going in and out of the paint. They're rolling to the basket, and that's how this unit got that rolling again, that motion. Wilson Chandler can definitely play with this. with this unit, but I do enjoy seeing him come off the bench, like I've said before. Plumlee and Jokic was just complete fire in this one. A couple of beautiful slick passes from Plumlee in this one. He had the slick between the leg pass to a cutting Murray, and then he had that nice little behind the back to Jokic. Jokic ended up getting fouled, but he had a very quiet, impactful game tonight. 2 big blocks on Porzingis, just denied him right at the rim, went up with him. And that's something I wish that he would be a little bit better at on this team. His vertical threat, his timing ability, you see his dunks and how easy he gets up, is that he would be a little bit more of a presence at the rim for those guys. So it was nice to see that he had some really impactful plays in this one. In the first half, there was a 13-point lead at the halftime, 22 assists, and it was really just led by the free-flowing offense, mainly started by the 2 bigs and their passing ability. And I think a reason why some people have an issue with Plumlee and Jokic playing together is because the idea is that you stagger them. You have the passing ability, not to the same extent, but somewhat of it in Mason Plumlee in that second unit. But when they're both firing off tonight, I mean, there's not a lot of complaints. Jamal Murray's aggression, the activity on the D, I thought was great. Jamal's aggression and energy on the court, Harris's hot hand, Trey Lyles and Wilson Chandler all really led the first half in the storyline, able to get the offense rolling, make sure to hit some good shots. The Knicks were definitely getting theirs a little bit too easy. Coach had even mentioned this after the halftime report as well, that there's too many fouls. They were getting too many easy buckets. And really it was that backcourt again. They were getting torched by a small, quicker guard who could hit shots in Trey Burke, and really just took it to him. So yeah, he had himself a nice little game tonight. In the third, Kristaps Porzingis picked up 2 early fouls, picking up his third pretty early on in the third quarter. So just a kudos and an excellent job to the Nuggets at going at him, especially Nikola Jokic. He never got relentless, never started settling for the outside shots. Really just kept going at Kristaps Porzingis, and that put a lot of pressure on him. Went out early, and we didn't see him again until the fourth, with about 9 minutes left when he really didn't see him again until the fourth with about 9 minutes left. So really took him out, made him a non-factor. Kyle O'Quinn was out, somebody who put a hurting on the Nuggets the last time we played him. So without Kristaps in there, really just Cantor in there kind of going at it by himself. There's really no way, and the Nuggets capitalized on that, and played it smart. The first unit on this one got a little lethargic. This is the half where it was definitely, this is the tale of the 2 halves. First half was fire, second half was lulled, a little bit clunky, and the boys were probably just a little bit tired, it looked like. Even with a couple days of rest, that first unit really pushing the pace and playing with such high energy almost felt like an MMA, they call it an adrenaline dump. You're playing with so much energy and it's so exciting. You take that half off. After the halftime, you come back out and it's almost like your adrenaline wasn't all the way there. The drive and the hunger wasn't quite there. Not that they were giving up by any means, or they were playing extremely boring. It's just it wasn't clicking as well, and there wasn't as great motion. The turnovers were starting to take effect. They're turning over. They're fouling a whole heck of a lot. The passes weren't as crisp. It was very evident that the energy of the first half had definitely left them. Porzingis picked up that 5th foul, like I was talking about, in the about the 5-minute mark of the third. So made him a non-factor, took him out nice and early. Like what Hastings had said about Jamal Murray at this time. A big storyline of tonight mentioned earlier was Jamal Murray and his big scoring night before and how he was going to play. He wasn't having the most amazing game, and what I liked about what Hastings said is, how do you respond in those times when you're not lights out? When you're not just going off and hitting every shot, and you're not doing that, how are you going to contribute to your team as a point guard, especially, and more importantly, how are you going to contribute to your team? How are you going to lead your teammate? Make sure you're getting them the open passes. Make sure you're playing defense, not giving up silly fouls, not giving up silly buckets, not losing or blowing your defensive assignments. Jamal Murray by no means is the best defender, but his efforts there, and that really means a lot. When you're not on fire, just to still contribute 18 points, and hopefully that's where Jamal Murray gets. The kid's not even legally allowed to drink yet, and a not good night or a not so good night for him is 18 points. he has that possibility to be a Damian Lillard-esque or a Kevin Durant or a Westbrook, where they're not so good nights is, 18, 19, 20 points. It's like, yeah, man, they were off tonight. How many did they score? All 20. And that's fantastic for a 20-year-old kid. Hopefully he can keep it up. He's been playing phenomenal. So, but like the way he played, like the way he gave his energy and still helped his team out here. This was another quarter where the double action wasn't there. The cuts, the screens away from the ball, the taking advantage of the baseline, everything wasn't there. But when they did do it, and they did do it a couple times, there was a pass from, I believe, Plumlee that was just a beautiful little dump off to Wilson, who's cutting on the baseline, coming from the three-point, and just caught the hole. He just snuck right behind the whole defense. Mason dropped it off of that no look, and Wilson went up for a nice little dunk. And it was working. But once again, as soon as they started that motion, that's why even in a small ball offense or a small ball set, there's still no excuse for me where you can't be taking advantage of the lanes. If anything, just to throw that defense off just by that half step. In this league, that's all these guys need is a half step. These are elite level athletes. And so to execute on that and take advantage of that, in my eyes, you're silly for not exploiting that in the defense, making them work and move as much when you're allowing them to be lazy and stay in their home base position by just working the outside perimeter. You're really giving them a break. You're making yourself work hard, and they're not having to do a whole heck of a lot to guard you. So, when they were taking advantage of the passing lanes and being aggressive and cutting, did it. Barton had a nice little look off pass to Trey Lyles. Okay, so this is one thing that I've noticed from Will Barton that cracks me up. Hold on here. Let me take a little sip. Sorry, the whole family's getting sick. Voice gets a little raspy after a little bit. But this is one thing that I find funny about Will Barton. I really started to notice at the beginning of the year, but it's still happening, and I feel like I have to say something about it because it cracks me up. Nikola Jokic is one of the absolute most stunning, beautiful passers as far as his ability to do it and execute a pass. His vision, his sense for his surroundings and his surroundings around his body, where he's at on the court, where his teammates are going, his touch, with the ball and the pass once it leaves his fingertips. So Nikola Jokic really since last year has just been the master of no look. It's the no look pass is every player kind of has their little marquee move. LeBron has the chase down. Russell Westbrook with the dunks, just destroying the rim, and Nikola Jokic is kind of that no look pass. I mean, the no look behind the back, just absurd passes. And so to me, it's funny. Something that I started to notice at the beginning of the year was Will Barton. Sometimes there'll be a direct pass. It may be just the next pass over, the next swing pass over. and he decides to get a little fancy, and I thought it was funny. To me, it looks like he's obviously he's not trying to be, but kind of trying to be Jokic-esque in the no-look way. It's a flashier way to do it. So it's like the next obvious pass. And definitely looking off the defense, right? And not, graphing your passes or not laying it out for the defense to read is important. But it's sometimes, I feel like he does it when it's unnecessary. So it's like, the next swing pass over is like, I'm gonna look off and dish pass, and it leads sometimes to open buckets. But I just feel it just cracks me up. It's just like a way to be a little bit flashier when it doesn't do a whole heck of a lot of good. And so just watch that every once in a while. He'll make a obvious next pass. Looking off the defense is always good, but it just cracks me up. He tries to kind of fling it sometimes and put a little pizzazz on it when it's just a regular pass will do well. So just something I had to call out. It just cracks me up every time I see it. And in this quarter, this is a part where why the points in the paint mean so much to me personally as far as what this team does. This is a time where the Knicks started to cut back into that points in paint. They started to catch up. On the night, the Nuggies ended with 54 points in the paint. They were dominating and absolutely destroying at some points in the first half. And the Knicks came all the way back with 52 points. I believe Cantor had, good Lord, who knows how many, Michael Beasley. Nobody could stop him. That old man is so smooth in his ability to finish with either hand. He's so cool, calm, and collected too. But the Nuggies did not have an answer for Michael Beasley. He was tearing them up. Cantor went on a little run on the inside, and I believe in the third, I believe in the third they went on 22 points in the paint in one freaking quarter. And that's what I was talking about. They actually were able to cut the lead down a little bit. In the fourth, actually, the Nuggets went on a 10-0 run early in the fourth, followed not too far after by a 7-0 run by the Knicks. And that's when they really started to cut down that lead, cut it down to within 10 points. The largest lead at any time in the game was 18 points. And you start to see that points in the paint creep up. When they start to take their foot off the brake, the points in the paint reflect that. It's not necessarily like, oh, they need to get points in the paint. I just believe it's a direct correlation into how a teller, if you will, into how the offense is flowing. And so when it's not clicking and it's not doing it, you're going to see that points in the paint not necessarily suffer, but the Nuggets aren't going to win that match. In my eyes, when the points in the paint where we're winning and winning points in the paint decisively, that's when I know the offense was good. And most of the time, we're going to win those games. So just something to kind of keep your eye on. That's something that always interests me there. More of Trey Lyles in the fourth. He was just absolutely hot, hitting his threes. Really started to take that lead over again. Porzingis finally checked in around the 9-minute mark. Some rough defensive stretches throughout the Nuggies. Just Trey Burke just tearing us up a little bit more all over the place. The offense went completely stag. Some real hit or miss, one-on-one. At this point, it really didn't matter. But the offense was just stag. It was not pretty in the second half, but beautiful in the first. Porzingis finally fouled out around the 4-minute mark. He ended with 21 points and 7 rebounds. So once again, not as an effective night for Kristaps Porzingis, but just like I was talking about with Jamal Murray and some of the great scorers in this league, a not so good night for them is still 20 points. So he still had himself a nice little going there. Jokic got his double-double in the fourth, which is really nice. Almost had a triple-double, had that seven assists, so he was only a few off from another triple-double. And he's had so many of those these years. His stat line, is always impressive to watch. The kid in general is fun. And I feel like one thing, if I do have to give a kudos for Nikola Jokic, although every NBA player complains, I have one other thing to say about that as well. But let me finish my thought real quick. So Nikola Jokic's body language has been much better. I believe Jamal Murray and even Coach had mentioned something in the Portland game about how his body language was so much better. They talked about it. He's like, oh, way better, way better. And sometimes his that body language, Mares, if you listen to the Locked On Nuggets podcast, a fantastic podcast to listen to. If you listen to him, he talks about how it's so demonstrative and how it can be a negative, and guys may even get annoyed with that, especially the refs. It's something he's kind of created himself a bad image in the league for arguing with refs, getting in their faces, and they've thrown a couple silly tees on him this year already. So something that I think that he's been doing better on. Still a long way to go, but definitely getting better on is his body language, making sure he's not complaining as much, making sure he's being a little bit smarter with that type of stuff. So I did like that. Now on to my point about people complaining. Hastings and Marlo both were talking about comments about how in the last month, nobody in the NBA has committed a foul. Every time somebody fouls, it's a head up in the air and complaining to the refs and whining and complaining. Even on the obvious situations when it's fouls, rarely do you see a person really just take responsibility, right? Every player, when they're called for it, is just flabbergasted, like just irate almost that the refs would even call a foul on them. And I think that's hilarious. You have Carmelo Anthony, who last week or last month, just recently, had come out and said, I'm done with the refs. I'm so done with the refs. They're just calling everything, and I used to have great relationships with the refs, and now I don't. And I like Carmelo, whatever. I'm not bashing him by any means, but that comment to me, it just strikes me hilarious. You don't think that maybe the amount that you guys complain? I play in an old man's league. I play in a washed up league here in town, and I feel bad for these refs. It's something I try not to do as much of, but I could still be guilty of it. But just a bunch of complainers, and these dudes end up teeing people and throwing people out in an old man washed up league here in town because they get sick of it. Every play you're arguing with somebody, every play they're talking to you, every play they're yapping all game long. Well, guess what? They're sick of it. They don't want to hear your crap anymore. These guys are paid money to watch the games and make calls. And don't get me wrong, by no means am I coming to the refs' aid. The refs make awful calls sometimes. On a fundamental level, the NBA is terrible. Almost every single time, I'd say 60% of the time, 70% of the time, these NBA players travel, they hack, they illegal screens, motion, everything that they teach you back in the day, Not anymore nowadays because these kids play just like NBA players because that's all they want to be like is Steph Curry and Lonzo Ball and all these other flashy players. But back in the day, everything they teach you about fundamental sound basketball is thrown out the window in the NBA. And so by no means am I running to the refs' aid or saying they're 100% right. They're definitely going to kill some games for us this year. They're good at doing it. But it's just funny to me about how so many players complain and bitch and talk to the refs all the time and always up in their face and then get upset when they get teed up. So like I said, playing devil's advocate here. The refs aren't the greatest sometimes, and sometimes they make some ridiculous calls. And a lot of times the players just need to back off. They, regardless of what it is, they teach you back in the day, the calls made, you arguing with them is going to do nothing. Figure it out, be mentally tough, move on, try not to foul, move your feet, don't hack, and then you won't get called for stuff. So I don't know, I just find it funny as far as that whole little dilemma goes. But anyways, off my rant there. Just had to get that one out there. It's something that kind of bugs me. So the Nuggets wrapped it up 130 to 118 tonight. That was just a little recap of the game. Nuggets are now in the 8th spot. They're a half game behind the Portland Trail Blazers. A team we won't see again until April time. But we'll see how this standing goes out. Looks like it's going to be a 4-team race to the very end. Whoever decides to come up and play and execute the season properly is who's going to get in. All these teams are playing extremely well. Players are stepping up on each team, so this race is going to be much tighter, especially with that little spree we had here in January. That I believe we really could have created some separation as far as the race in the West with this January schedule. We had a very favorable, very winnable one. We dropped some really, really tough games that unfortunately you're going to drop sometimes. And so it's really important from here on out. In my last pod, you heard me mention that from here on out, every game is going to matter because all these games are going to mean something here in the next couple months. Whether your losses or your wins, they're going to come to haunt you if you're not winning the games you need to be winning. So in the West, like I said, currently we are in the playoffs, half game behind Portland. Right above them in the 6 spots, New Orleans, 5th, Oklahoma City, 4th, Minnesota. I think at this point, it's safe to say that the 4 spots pretty. Not necessarily out of reach, but it would take some really, really good play from this ball club to get into that 4 spot. But I think, even 5th, 6th spot, attainable, and definitely, hopefully, we don't fall any lower than the 8th. This is a very crucial year for this team to prove that through adversity, even though with lots of adversity, and they may get a break because of the whole Millsap being out for so long, and Malone really having to coach on the fly. And when you factor in that, that's why I made my stance early about the whole fire Malone is ridiculous. And when I see fans in the Twitter sphere and the Nugget sphere really just talking about fire Malone, it baffles me. No, he doesn't make the greatest decisions sometimes, and sometimes he makes some questionable lineup calls and personnel changes. But for better or for worse, he's our coach. I do like him that he's a player's coach. The players seem to respect him, and the fact that he's done a damn good job for missing one of our key players for most of the season. So no fault there, and not just Millsap. We've had multiple injuries. Jokic was out for a little while. Harris has been hurt a couple times. So, it's been injuries here and there riddled out. Every team has to deal with them. However, I like the fact that this team's so young and we're still able to be where we're at, and that the season is still optimistic. If we were in a different spot, sure, maybe five alone, but right now I just too premature. So this does mark the 10th straight win at home against the New York Knicks. We just have their card at home, so that's nice to see 2 in a row for the last 2 nights. Gary Harris, definitely the nugget of the night. Or you could say all of the Nuggets. All of them were scoring, playing well, especially in that first unit. Gary Harris stole the show with his offensive ability and output tonight, so that was really nice to see. 22 total assists in the first half. The Nuggets ended with 36 total. So definitely a lot more, like I said, tale of 2 halves. 22 assists, 36. That shows you right there exactly what's going on. On the night, the Nuggets shot 48 for 60 from the field. That's good for 60%. 13 turnovers. Like to see that drop down a couple. 50% from the three-point line. The three-point line was banging. And I personally, for those of you who do or don't know, I'm actually a giant Duke fan as well. And one of my biggest pet peeves is that Duke is a three-point reliant team, or has been for quite several years. This new team's a little bit different with Marvin Bagley, an absolute monster. And good Lord, I'd love to see him on the Nuggets. But Marvin Bagley And then you have Wendell Carter Jr., and then you have the other big boy as well. And so there's a little bit different on this lineup. But anyways, just going back, I can't, and I don't like a team that's reliant on the three. If you can hit your threes and your three stroking, fantastic. But when you're having a complete game of taking advantage of drives, finishing strong in the paint, and hitting your outside shots is when you're super lethal. And that's when you see your teams like the Golden State Warriors, right? Your three-point shot becomes more effective and more efficient when you're able to exploit the defense down low because they're worried about getting burnt. They hate getting scored on down in the paint. So now they're playing you a little bit further off. Now they have to respect your shot. And when they don't respect your shot, you put it in their eye, dagger right in the eye. So it's important to have all that three, never to rely too much on one. So the three-point shooting tonight percentage was really high. I think all that came from just a really good offense, especially in the first half. 36 assists, like I mentioned earlier, 54 points in the paint. The Nuggets bench definitely made a little comeback, but got outscored 64-54 for the bench unit on tonight's game. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's a little recap for you. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for giving me your time. Thanks for joining us for this episode. Make sure to tune in for the next episode. We will be dropping a special one this weekend or early next week sometime with some cool special guests from the Diggin' Denver and Real Ball Insiders crew. So keep your eyes posted for that. Shout out to all our fans, all of our followers, and all the people who listen, like I said, to this podcast. We really do appreciate you. You can always follow me once again at Diggin' Derek on Twitter. Make sure to go follow the team's handle at Diggin' Denver to stay up to date and in tune to all that we're doing on Instagram as well. We'll show you when we're at practices, getting some cool quotes and stuff like that on there, some good video as well when I can make it down. And then, of course, always make sure you find your way on over to the Diggin' Denver website where we have all of our articles up on. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure being with you this evening, afternoon, morning, whenever you're listening to this podcast. So with that all being said, I will see you guys very soon. Our next upcoming game against Dallas on Saturday. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, let's dig in.
I walk around town with the pound strapped down to my side. No frontin' just in case I gotta smoke some. Round here, heads don't act the age. It might be another dead boy on page. Into the cipher with your lighter. Elves are ready. Prepare for another on